Welcome to the Breaking 90 podcast, where we talk about all things sustainable fat loss. We take people on 90-day journeys to creating fat loss forever. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome back to the Breaking 90 podcast. I am your host, Kelly Sarlo, and I am here with my amazing co-host, Jerrika Rydell. Jer, how are you?
I'm doing so well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. What's new?
Good. Well, as most of you know by now, I'm pregnant. So yeah, surprise. I'm 5 months now, and depending on when you're listening, I believe it's soon. And I have this new outlook on movement, because I have always been, and most of you have been listening probably for a while, so I've always been very structured, very goal oriented. I'm chasing big numbers in the gym. I love lifting heavy things. And so since becoming pregnant, I had this mindset that, like, I see it online all the time. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and lift and exercise hard. And my body's, the doctors say, just keep doing what you're doing. So I thought that's what I would be doing. And I had this new love and new outlook for my body in terms of just listening to it, which I preach every day, but truly listening and moving when I can, when I feel like it. Listening to the energy that my body's like, okay, I have this much today. Like maybe that's 20 minutes, maybe that's 10. So it's been good for me mentally to change, I guess, the way I've approached fitness my whole life. And I have definitely a new outlook, but a new look for my clients as well, who, express these same sort of feelings. And now I can relate, I think, a little bit better to say, okay, take it easy, listen to your body. And now I can understand what that really feels like, because I've really scaled things back, and I don't exercise nearly as much as I used to, and I'm actually loving every second of it.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I thought I'd be the opposite, but I still feel very empowered because of what my body's doing. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, what a lesson in empathy too, right? To be put into a physically different scenario and choose to learn the way that you've chosen, because I think a lot of people might resist it, and you've obviously embraced the opportunity to learn.
Yes, yeah, for sure. It was hard at first, but gotta be humble and be like, okay, take it easy. But yeah, so it's been my new kind of thought process as of lately.
Good for you.
Thank you.
What do you got for us today?
So today I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. You made a post on our Breaking 90 Instagram page. If you're not following, everyone that's listening, you should be. So you made a post about connection.
Yeah.
And I thought this was really cool. And you touched on, your focus on summer and your connection to people, connection to purposeful movement, and your connection to food. And those three right there, I thought, were just the perfect highlights. And I actually want to take your post and dive deeper, because you just touched on what your focus was this summer, but I think we can even relate it back to how important connection to people, movement, and food is for people on a fat loss journey, or for a lot of our clients or people that are listening to this podcast regularly. So not just maybe your take on the summer, but also tying it into our clients that are listening.
I love that. And actually, I'll take the time to mention too, this is like the first episode of season 4. So it's exciting for us, because 4 years is a milestone for sure. And I think it's a perfect time of year, being September, which we kind of consider our second new year in a year, I guess. And I'm also going to be a lot more mindful of the posts I put up, because now I'm going to be put on the spot and asked about them. So thank you. I love that. Yeah, so I know the post that you're talking about, it was what we call a depth post when we're making content for everyone. And it allows us to sort of connect more with the audience, which I always love doing. And I specifically chose to do this because it was summer, and a lot of people, I think, go into it feeling highly motivated because more of our bodies are physically exposed throughout the summer months. And we think we're going to make great progress. We feel really motivated. And then we kind of get sidetracked with all of the social commitments that we make, and we're like, oh shit, I did the opposite. I thought it would be really good to talk from a coach's perspective, to say, like, here's how my summer ended up going because of and in spite of my plans. And then I'll also say, kind of on a side note, for anyone who's just tuning in, like, my background is psychology. I have a coaching practice for people that is all centered around connection. And that's why I was brought onto the Breaking 90 team, is because of the mindset piece. So talking about movement, people, and food, like that is the experience that we are having as whole human beings, right? We're having an experience in a body that needs to be fueled, which is the food component. And that just sustains us on a physical level. But what we know in the psychology world is we cannot actually be sustained without interpersonal connections, right? So those three components are the main focus of life, as far as I'm concerned. And then what I've been really trying to do is focus on the Breaking 90 principles or guiding principles, specifically one in this situation, which is purpose over pleasure, right? And how pleasure sometimes can be a purpose. And that's often what summer turns into. So that was kind of the whole approach that I took to writing the post. So how would you like me to dive into them? Do you have any specific idea of what you're looking for? Or
Yeah, I wrote a few notes, but just to kind of prompt you on, I was thinking if we can take them each separate. So connection to people, and maybe why connecting to people are so important when fat loss is the primary goal, because most of our listeners are likely trying to learn about health, but specifically fat loss, or just maintaining, fat loss as they have in the past. So yeah, if we can just tie it back to that, and if you need some help, I wrote some notes, but I know I'll chime in as we go.
Thank you. I'll keep that in mind. So I think actually starting with people is probably one of the heaviest ways that we can start, and I'm here for it for sure. Specifically because the kinds of connections that we're creating with people in our life, they heavily influence our behaviors and our habits, right? And there's tons of psychological studies that you guys can look into on how that is true. One of them being that the people that you keep closest to you within that 5 or 6 closest members, doesn't have to be family in particular, we end up adopting a lot of the same behaviors or emulating a lot of the same characters and qualities or characteristics and qualities. So if you look at the 5 or 6 closest people to you, proximity, the amount of time that you're spending together, not just the people that you consider to be like, well, this is my mom, she should be the most important person, but the actual people you're surrounding yourself with on a daily basis, can you see many similarities in terms of your eating habits, in terms of your movement habits, in terms of your belief systems as well, right? Because we're so heavily influencing each other. So in a fat loss journey in particular, if we're looking at lifestyle habits, is your group, someone who values movement, who values, sedentary lifestyle? And how is that impacting each other when one of you says, I want to lose weight, or I want to get more active, or I want to start eating healthier, however you're articulating that goal? That support system is either going to rise up because you're all relatively on the same page and valuing the same things out of life, or you may be met with active resistance. And I know there's a whole world of gray in between those two, but it's something to keep in mind as you are evaluating the connections that you are creating as well as maintaining, right? So if a great example is I do most of the enrollment calls for people who want to come into the fat loss program. And one of the biggest questions we ask is, what does your support system look like? And so if someone's on the call saying, oh yeah, my husband supports all of my decisions and I'm the cook in the family and they eat what I want to eat. Okay, great. Like this is going to be an environment in which your goal and your environment and your goal are going to support each other. Versus if it's like, well, my husband and my kids won't eat what I eat, or my husband refuses to make any changes to his lifestyle, I'm on my own. Then the connections that you're keeping, if people aren't wanting to understand where you're at, or empathizing with the journey that you're taking, or asking, how can I support you even if I don't want to make the changes, then you're going to see, varying degrees of success based on those connections, right? So as you choose what you're putting in your agenda each day or your schedule, whether it's your coffee dates or the walks that you're taking, are you choosing to do those things with people who feel connected to you, or you feel connected to you on a deeper level, that truly support the life that you want, not just offer you lip service?
Awesome. That's exactly what I was hoping for you to say, and then some as usual. I think the support with your surrounding people and accountability that these people play in your lifestyle and motivation in some ways. Yeah, the 5-person ish rule is kind of what I came to mind when the people came up. So awesome.
And that's not to panic anyone either, right? Because some of you will be, highly reflective people listening to this and thinking, "Oh, I need to make some changes," and that's a good thing, right? If you've looked around you and decided like, "Wow, these people really are not valuing what I value, and it's actually pulling me into a lifestyle I don't desire for myself," you can start to make small changes to create connections elsewhere, invite connections to your present people, right, in a different way, and maybe also decide that it's time to walk away from a few of them. You've got options, and I hope people feel empowered to explore them and know that there are coaches out there of all different kinds of qualifications who can help you do that.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. That's a great start. That wasn't too heavy.
Okay, good. It is if people are like, "Oh no, my
I
people
know.
are not great people."
Yeah, my people suck. No, no.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so then if that's what we're going to say, we can dive right into the movement sort of component. And I think this one's going to be cool because you can take this in a couple different routes from connecting to movement, but we'll let you get started.
Yeah, so the movement piece I kind of want to do in two different ways. So one is solo, right? So movement just on your own based on the season or the time of year. Specifically, we were just talking about summer. The way that I moved my body changed because I wanted to experience outside, right? Outdoors in a different way. I'm not a winter person, even though, I'm born in the north of Canada. It's just not where or when I thrive. So the opportunity to be outside in the warmer months, I was so happy to switch, to paddleboarding instead of being at the gym 4 days a week. And I, looking at that weather app and deciding every time I would have been on the treadmill to go up the hills or up the incline, I'm going to get, into a park or onto a lake or whatever I can to move in a way that feels more nourishing, which is outdoor fresh air, right? Knowing that that other routine will be waiting for me when the snow hits. So the movement changed just based on my decision and my kind of enjoyment because of weather. The second component of that is I chose to invite people to join me in my movements, right? So when I would normally schedule a tea date or a coffee date and the sun was out, I would invite them for a walk instead. So connection was happening within my own body, but then also inviting people to join in those movements within the body part of things all summer long. So I also traded out some standard workouts for play. And you talk about this a lot, and I love the way that you do. Alex has touched on this a lot, because Emerson is 6 years old and they're constantly finding ways to move and play. So one of the things that we did was go to an outdoor obstacle inflatable course on Lake Simcoe. And I looked at him and I was like, "This is my 20 minutes of purposeful movement today, right?" And he was like, "Oh, heck yes." So just, I think for some people, you might conceptualize this in terms of I compromised my workout for this activity. And in my mind, purpose and pleasure kind of came together in that moment. And it wasn't a compromise on a workout. It was, this is the kind of connectivity that I want today, fills my heart, challenges my body in terms of stability and balance in ways that the gym just cannot, right? And seeing the value in it instead of having to equally equate it to something that I was doing for my strength and conditioning program. So it becomes something fun.
That's awesome. And I think it's important to note for anyone listening, and a lot of you have really big goals in terms of maybe the gym or movement. And it's not to say that you have to put them completely on pause. And I love that you highlighted, instead of walking on incline, I just found a new way to do it outside. I found a hill, or I did resistance with a paddle in the water. Like, it's not that you're not going to achieve your goals. And you know what? You can put your goals aside for things that you do want to connect to, and the things that, if movement, going for a walk, and even though lifting really heavy might be the forefront of your goal right now, and you chose to go for a walk, that's not to say it's a bad thing that you put it aside, but there are ways we can explore and connect to movement that's not in your standard program that you're receiving via an app, right? And I love that you were able to highlight that and enjoy it all summer long. Awesome. Yeah.
All right. This one can get a bit messy, so I'm going to do my best to be really clear and concise. So obviously with the summer, most of us experience an influx of invitations to things like barbecues, birthday parties, celebrations that involve food that don't necessarily contribute to our goals, if I can say it that way. And so the idea of purpose, meaning, the goal that you're trying to achieve with your health and fitness, versus pleasure, where this is simply an enjoyable experience on my tongue, let's put it that way, not for the sake of moving towards my goals. You start to kind of do this in terms of weighing, what am I doing? Do I want to contribute to the goals, or do I want to enjoy this experience, right? And I'll mention, we have this concept called minimize the damage, which is super helpful when it comes to figuring out, how do I want to stay connected to my food? So if we think about purpose versus pleasure, Emerson's 6th birthday party, totally pleasure, right? But that becomes the purpose. I want to be present and eat cake with him because that is a celebratory, connective moment. And I can minimize the damage by having one slice of cake or half of the slice that I would normally have, right? So you end up being able to create these wonderful options where we're not restricting ourselves. We're still having enjoyment, but we're not getting to the point of gluttony, right? And I think for a lot of people, if you've ever restricted yourself in terms of your diet, gluttony is the other end of it. And that's where we get into an all or nothing mindset. And then the food, no matter what you're doing, the purpose is not fun. And then the pleasure is also not fun. And that's where we bring in the term guilt, right? And instead of coming into that nice middle ground of saying, how do I want this particular meal to create connection with this other individual? How is it actually being celebratory versus am I just using it as an excuse to consume more and more, right? And it's also tying into something I love to talk about, which is people pleasing. Sometimes, it requires looking at your schedule or your agenda and seeing, how many barbecues did I say yes to? How many birthday parties did I say yes to? And if you're going to attend all of them, then maybe in the back of your mind, you've got to think, yes, I'm going to go. And the connection is going to be with the people. And I'm not going to eat the food. I'm going full. I'm going to go full and also eat the vegetables, the fruits there, right? And so I've determined that the purpose is strictly connection to people and not to food at some of these events. And that doesn't have to be seen as offensive or me, turning down someone's food and being rude. That can be, I'm here for a purpose, right? Versus, if you've determined that one of your friends is a better baker than the other, and you're definitely going to eat her cake, right? Part of that pleasure and connectivity is to the food, and you can fully enjoy that. And again, keep it in a minimize the damage kind of situation, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's how I've challenged myself to think about it. And I think in terms of fat loss too, especially throughout the summer months, a big question I chose to ask myself, I'm trying to steer away from have to and should, a question I chose to ask is, what is the importance of the number on the scale? So yes, I do want to be healthy. That's the overall goal. Is it extremely important that I am down to 125 on August 31st? Like, who at that point on that day is going to celebrate me so huge that it's like, yes, this goal was worth it, right? Like, other than looking down at the scale for that split second and being like, oh, I did it, what does it matter? So if I'm in and around there and I'm in a maintenance phase, fantastic. If I'm seeing a great trend of weight loss, but I don't hit that exact number by the end of summer or during summer, is it that big of a deal, right? Trying to keep things in perspective so that you're not taking away from the opportunity to connect to the three things that we're talking about, and keep in perspective, like, really, what is this goal doing for you overall? It just kind of helps you balance out intention on a day-to-day basis.
Cool. That's awesome. And then I'm going to circle back just a second. Something just came to my mind about connecting to food. And this is something that I've talked about before, and I like to do, is especially as a person who is very busy, and even if they don't have to be busy, they're busy and doing crazy things, eating while they're talking and walking. I tried to really connect to my food in terms of my senses, like, actually taking the time to chew and taste and look at, and feel if you can, and hold it, and like taking the time to eat and utilizing your five senses, or however many you can at the time, can play a really big factor, not just in your digestion and how you feel, but in your fat loss journey. Like, you're eating slower, your hunger cues are coming in. So even when you're at home, and you chose to connect to food in maybe a healthy way. Today I made my healthy salad, and no one's around. Well, let's take advantage of that, and dive into what else is going on in terms of your senses.
Yeah, I love that. I think as a general question, if you're checking in with yourself to say, in this moment, what am I consciously choosing to connect to? It recenters you constantly, right? So if you are sitting down, or you're eating on the move, and you're like, wait, I've got a carrot stick. Like, slow down, be here. This is going to be over soon. It just gives you that presence, which is beautiful, and is going to help steer you away from the gluttony too, right?
Absolutely. Cool. Awesome, Kelly. This was a great topic, and I'm so glad you picked each one apart the way I was imagining it, I knew you would. I think everyone listening can take so much, whether it's just one thing from the people, or from the movement, or from the food, but I know it'll resonate with every single person in a different way. So that's pretty cool.
And props to you, because it was an excellent topic. So thank you for bringing that up.
You started it, really.
It's a good team. I will say too, like, for some people who listen to this, it's probably going to bring up some emotions, right? Because when we do realize that we maybe don't resonate with the idea of connection, and you're starting to recognize, like, oh my gosh, I've lost connection with a lot of things, or connection is not something that is in the forefront of my mind, that can be a scary emotional thing, because, and I'm not saying or accusing anyone, but this is where depression can come in. If it's not a neurological or chemical issue, lost connections is where depression starts. So if you can think about the opposite, and start to really consciously draw attention to where you are choosing to connect in your life, you can combat a little bit of that mental health.
Awesome. Wow. Really cool. Great tie-in. Thank you. That's really important.
Yeah, thank you. So do you want to leave us with a tip today?
My tip is something that I've been doing once a week, once maybe twice a week in the last few weeks. And this is for people, all my work from homers, specifically, that have the opportunity or the option to get up and change locations. So once a week, I've been just working from a totally different spot. And that's not just to stay in my home, like I'm leaving my house, whether it's at a picnic table, or whether it's at a coffee shop, in a different coffee shop. I've just been changing my environment, especially for me now that my dog's old enough so I can leave him long now. So I've been exploring with leaving the house, and it's crazy what I've been able to accomplish, just getting out of the house and not being distracted by, house chores. So this is my challenge for all my work from home friends out there.
That's awesome. All right, and that'll certainly contribute to people's goals. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome.
So as we wrap up today, I would encourage you, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe or the like button wherever you're listening from. If you're listening on a podcast platform, we always ask that you leave a review. And if you're up for it, you can take a screenshot, share it to your social media platform, and invite friends to listen, or share this podcast with someone. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll be back next week with another episode.
Awesome.